Honored to welcome you all today in this wonderful space and for a wonderful event. We're delighted to gather here today in the beautiful Adams Atrium, and we want to say thank you, Linda Adams, after whom one of the Adams peoples, this is named after, is here today. And of course, we recognize and we value the fact that all of this, all of our campus, resides on treaty lands and territory of the Mississaugas of the Credit. We recognize that the gathering places where we work, where we learn, is home to many past, present, and future First Nations, Inuit, and Métis peoples. Our acknowledgement of the land and our declaration of our collective responsibility to this place, stewarding it responsibly, and its people's histories, rights, and presence are core to the University of Guelph goals. The Nobel Prize-winning biochemist Albert Szent-Györgyi perhaps said it best: "Water is life's matter and matrix, mother and medium. There is no life without water." And I think this is a particularly timely case for us to be repeating that. When we look at what's going on in the east of Canada and the west of Canada, we realize that water is so important in so many different ways to our collective lives. And it's also something which, I don't know about you, but as a Canadian, I was always brought up to be proud of the fact that we have some of the most beautiful waterscapes, fresh waterscapes, in the world, and that it's important we cherish that, and that gives us something special as a country and as a people. That insightful quote is a reminder of the paramount importance of the water that we often take for granted, especially the sustainability and availability of groundwater. It is an irreplaceable resource that unites us all here today. I don't know about you, but the last few weeks I've been particularly mindful of how fortunate we are. When you turn on the tap, we magically have clean water to drink, to wash, and we have the luxury watering our gardens, allowing our plants to flourish because of that water. So it's something which I think is a daily reminder, and the research done here is pivotal to that sustainability of that most precious resource. And we are so proud of the work being done through the Morwick G360 Institute at the University of Guelph. Protecting this vital resource through field-based groundwater research in Guelph has impacts, it has impacts across North America and around the world. Many of you will know Beth Parker, who leads this wonderful initiative. She and I were just speaking. In February, I was in India, Bangladesh, and Singapore, where Beth does collect some work in partnership. When you go to countries like this, you realize even more so how dire is the need for us to pay attention to water and to preserve it and to do this research. Here at the University of Guelph, we've recently defined our new strategic plan, which outlines our goals for the next 5 years. 2 of our top priorities are to deepen our impact on the world and to build a sustainable tomorrow. The Morwick G360 Institute is a prime example of the type of research, expertise, and knowledge development that will allow us to continue making a meaningful impact, both here in our own community of Guelph and abroad. I am so grateful to everyone who's come together today to make this institute and this leading academic and research work possible. Today, of course, we are truly honored to have with us the man for whom this world-leading institute and its future home are named, Mr. Ted Morwick. So maybe could I get you, Ted, to just stand up and just turn around so people can Ted Morwick has long been a friend to the University of Guelph. His transformational gift of $10 million in support of the Institute, as well as water and climate change research, demonstrates his commitment not only to our institution and our values, but a deep commitment to the future of our planet. Ted, I would like to personally thank you for your incredible generosity, commitment to the University of Guelph, commitment to excellence, and your dedication to a shared vision and mission to improve life. Through the support of a portion of Ted Morwick's gift, as well as gifts from several others, the campaign to complete the new Morwick Groundwater Research Centre continues to gain momentum. The project is now 80% funded. Part of today's event is to rally support from U of G's alumni network, as well as from industry and research partners of the Morwick Groundwater Research Institute to help us cross that finish line. I want to acknowledge and thank the dozens of other partners and supporters of the Morwick 360 Institute who are with us here today. There are some of you I've not met you all, but it's wonderful that you've traveled here, some long distances, some a little bit shorter, to join this annual general meeting this week, as well as this wonderful event. Thank you all for your partnership on these important research projects and for helping us advance the study of groundwater. We sincerely hope that we can count on your continued support in the future as we endeavor to complete this important project. And I want to say thanks to all of the U of G alumni with us today from our School of Engineering, School of Environmental Sciences, the Ontario Agricultural College, and all other colleges represented here today. The beauty of water research is it brings people from across the disciplines. It's a shared concern, and this is a big issue, and multiple perspectives help us solve some of the biggest challenges of our day. As alumni with interests in groundwater, your support can and does play an integral role in keeping this project alive and getting it to that finish line. Whether you're a donor, advocate, or another type of supporter, we appreciate all of your support. The Morwick G360 Institute's dynamic leader, Dr. Beth Parker, is going to join us in a few moments to share more about the campaign, as well as the state of the dynamic research being conducted by the Institute across the globe. Now, to learn even more about Ted Morwick, if you were embarrassed before, we're just going to make it even harder. This outstanding group and their shared vision, please enjoy this short video.
Since groundwater is a hidden resource, it often gets misunderstood or ignored. It represents 99% of the available freshwater resource on the planet.
Two of the major things that are impacting groundwater resources are population growth and climate change. The UN's predicting that there'll be 11 billion people on Earth by 2100. It's also going to be water quality impacts.
Very concerned about climate change all my life. Back in the late 1950s, when Toronto expanded and they started gobbling up all this good farmland, and they just kept expanding, all the farmland was disappearing. That's when I got really concerned.
Water is life. Groundwater is everywhere beneath us, but not visible. It moves slowly through soil and rock, providing local access everywhere, time for purification, and sustains flow in lakes and rivers throughout the year. However, our relationship with groundwater is poorly understood. Many people are facing serious water shortages because groundwater is used faster than it's replenished or is polluted by human activities. G360's become well known for the innovative tools that we're using at real field sites. And so we've been invited to work with other collaborating institutes at 5 of the 7 continents around the globe. And here we are standing at the Scout Camp, which is one of my research sites. In the city of Guelph, we have the Aramosa River with a bedrock bottom, which makes it a bedrock river, and it's the largest community in Canada that's reliant on groundwater from bedrock systems. And one of our specializations in the G360 Institute is studying fractured rock hydrology.
My research focuses primarily on rural groundwater systems, so I'm very interested in the interaction of food production and groundwater. Another layer is investigating climate change. We've been learning through our research that the scale of investigation is very important for addressing climate change issues.
Knowing the resources and the personnel available that I would be able to work with was really exciting for me, and I was just so intrigued by all of the really incredible and innovative research projects. As a community, Guelph, we're so heavily reliant on groundwater resources for our drinking water supply, and I think groundwater is increasingly gaining attention, realizing that this is our main source of fresh water and something that needs to be protected.
It's very important that we continue this work, and Guelph is really a world leader.
I'm very excited for this new facility. I think from a student perspective, there's just huge opportunity for experiential learning.
This facility will serve as a hub for groundwater research. It'll give us the workshop and lab space that we need to actually develop these tools and instruments. This teaching side of this facility will help bring groundwater, which is traditionally out of reach, right into the classrooms.
Graduate students are going to be able to use the facility to stage their research, to analyze their results.
I'm really excited about the opportunity for more public outreach. It's important that we are able to increase awareness within the communities.
This gift is going to propel groundwater forward as a major research thrust at the University of Guelph, and it's going to attract students and create a wealth of groundwater professional expertise that's going to serve Canada well into the future.
The building will be for research and education and, advance the technology as it relates to groundwater research. And I just hope that it'll play a very significant part in that endeavor.
Now that's truly inspiring. Now it's my great pleasure to welcome to the podium the woman who is leading these efforts to ensure a future of clean groundwater for all, the director of the Morwick G360 Groundwater Research Institute, Dr. Beth Parker.
Good afternoon and welcome. Thank you, President Yates, and it's a pleasure to see you again, Ted. And I want to just, take a moment to celebrate a successful week with all my partners and family and friends here that have joined us in this endeavor with groundwater research. And today's celebration really is multi-layered. First, to celebrate a very busy week with lots of graduate student research presentations. Also, the contributions of our sponsors and partners who help us do this field-based research. And then most importantly of all, I wish to repeat our expression of gratitude to Ted Morwick and the generous gift to the Groundwater Research Institute here at the University of Guelph. We realized this in 2021 and we announced it during COVID, and so I think it's been a real pleasure to have this opportunity to do it in person and mingle and have conversations after we share some slides and some stories. The big gift here has been very helpful for us to realize the construction of the classroom that would be attached to the existing field facility that allows us to mobilize equipment out to all these research sites around the globe. And the importance of this classroom really is part of a vision to be able to host workshops and conferences like the ones we've been hosting this week, hold graduate and undergraduate classes in close proximity to groundwater wells and boreholes that are scattered across the university campus, and especially at the Arboretum where we have our facility located. And so this summer going to realize the groundbreaking of this classroom and realize that next phase. The other importance of this classroom is it's an excellent venue for holding public outreach events with College Royal, or just inviting school-aged children and adults to come understand the aquifer in which we live upon and what we rely on for our local drinking water supply. So with that, I'd like to share a few slides. I'm most comfortable when I have slides. And what I'd like to do is just maybe hit some highlights. Some of them have been shared in the video, so maybe we can skip through them and get to the more interesting stories that'll come after me. It all started when I arrived here at the University of Guelph in 2007, and I brought my industry partners and sponsors with me to fund an NSERC, or federally funded industrial research chair. So that was the beginning, and some of my colleagues followed me from the University of Waterloo, and so the main story here is it's a team that's responsible for all of this success. We were able to build this field facility, which is shown in the picture behind me here, with some grant money, and that allowed us to operate smoothly, at least with a roof over our heads, but not so much in the way of utilities. But Jana Levison joined me in 2012 with a groundwater focus, and we both have an interest in bedrock aquifers, and we're both very excited to work here in Southern Ontario with our colleagues that are also working hard in those environments. And so where this brings us today is fundraising for finishing the facility and the vision for these resources, and also building the capacity we need for faculty and continuing what we've started here. Groundwater is a very multidisciplinary topic, as we've mentioned, and also field systems tend to be very complex. So we've amassed a real large team here. I'll figure this out. Am I pointing somewhere? There we go. Anyway, so this slide just points out how we do our work. We're in the field. We take a systems approach. We're building infrastructure in the ground, which means drilling boreholes, collecting data, collecting that data into database systems, and then building models that allow us to predict these groundwater flow systems and how dynamic they are and how they're responding to climate variability or contamination that gets into these aquifers. I have a host of folks that like to work on groundwater topics, and the top row represents the faculty that are actively collaborating with me on various projects with various skills and insights that come along with their past training. The second row are a number of adjunct professors or affiliates with our group that further enhance that expertise. The bottom row are additional collaborators that are part of active projects at the time. So as Dr. Yates has mentioned, it's very integrative across the university campus and across Canada as well as globally. The cartoon here just repeats what we've just learned. Groundwater is 99% of the available fresh water resource that we rely on for life. Okay, and more than 50% of the world's population are dependent on groundwater for their drinking water supply. And a large number of people, 2.5 billion or more, rely solely on groundwater for their daily needs, including sanitation. It's important to realize that groundwater and surface water are one resource. They're inextricably linked. And so the sustaining of surface water flows is due to what we call base flow, where groundwater discharges into surface water, including the rivers and lakes. And we rely on groundwater for irrigation to grow the food that we're sustaining our lives with as well. And so the estimate is 43% of irrigation water comes directly from wells. But if we factor in the base flow into surface water, we can increase the amount we rely on groundwater for irrigation to about 70%. And with climate variability, what's interesting is where these changes in climate are going to happen. The dry, the semi-arid and arid regions are perhaps going to get even less water. We're melting our permafrost and glaciers, and so our weather patterns are changing, and where and how this precipitation occurs is changing the whole groundwater, surface water system, and how we adapt to that is going to be a very important challenge. Sorry. And the important part of groundwater is it has long lag times, and so it's our resilience factor in this dynamic hydrologic system. So when we have droughts, it's the ability to access groundwater that sustains us through those dry periods. And there's important threats to our groundwater resource. One is the over-abstraction or pumping of groundwater, and the other is the contamination that's been created, mainly from industrial activities over the last couple hundred years. And we're still discovering some of the impacts from those activities. The year 2022 was the year of groundwater, celebrated by UNESCO, and diagrams were prepared or updated that show the hydrologic cycle, showing, I think, a much more sophisticated view of the subsurface freshwater system and how it's multi-layered, and that brings in multiple spatial and temporal scales of relevance. And that's what our research is aimed to I suppose, uncover and essentially make more visible is more detailed characterization and monitoring methods that allow us to better find solutions for these pending challenging problems. There's a long list here of socially relevant topics with respect to groundwater, and the list could be extended if we had more slide space. So last year was a big year for celebrating the importance of groundwater, making the invisible visible, and I suppose that's really what we're in the business of trying to do: get better data, make better informed decisions, better predictions, give us opportunities for those solutions. And this is an important statement in this most recent report that I guess is motivating us to not give up and to keep working on these problems. But we need trained hydrogeologists to do this work. And that's the important thing, I guess, when we bring in the Morwick G360 Institute. We're in the business of training young professionals and giving them the experience they need to go out there and tackle some of these problems. What's interesting, I went to a conference last week in London, the one in the UK, and it was interesting to hear people talk about the lack of available hydrogeologists to be hired to fill these positions. And so there's more than 2,000 openings right now for looking for hydrogeologists, and this is occurring on all 6 of the continents here. And so I think we need to take this responsibility to heart in terms of training good people to work on these problems. And we believe that field-based experience in your training is instrumental in terms of being able to think about the complexity of the problem and serve the profession well going forward. And there's also interest in continuing education and engaging with our partners and our sponsors to bring them back and share with them the kind of new insight that we've generated with innovative tools and so on. So this brings us to our mission and our vision statement that we've been using here, essentially generating global respect for groundwater, the invisible resource, but then being able to open up that black box and inform it with the right data that informs our decisions. And our students are happy in the fields. You can see whether it's raining or snowing, they're having a good time. I have a crew in Northwest Territories at the moment, and they're working 24 hours a day, 7 days in a row for 20-day shifts to get boreholes into the Fort Liard community. Where do our students come from? they come from everywhere. We have a very international group of students, and that, I suppose, enhances the experience for everybody. Where do they go? Mostly consulting, but I would say that that's probably the nature of our profession. But they're going everywhere. They're going into industry and government organizations and so on. This is just a few of the students that have recently been leaving the program in the last couple of months. So it just gives you a sense of the mobilization of this talent out there in the workforce. And this brings us to the nature of our work. We've mentioned it's field-based, and we're also global. We've been invited to work on all 6 of the continents so far. Not Antarctica would be our last one to be invited to work on. And surprisingly enough, or to me anyway, is there's active work there. So there might be a possibility in the future. Okay, so let's bring it home a bit more locally. We're standing on a very important water supply aquifer that's in Dolostone, and Guelph sits in the heart of that Silurian-Dolostone aquifer system. It's been the focus of my research since, I think, 1997. Chris Turner, I think you worked at the site that I started with. And this is a view of this Dolostone aquifer from a local outcrop. And it's what we call a fractured rock aquifer. And here's a cartoon sketch of some of the challenges in terms of managing this freshwater resource in an urban environment like Guelph, where there's lots of anthropogenic impacts from leaking sewers or septic systems, industrial sources, and so on. And they tend to move slowly through the groundwater system and take long times to remediate. So this is a map view. I think they're yellow. Yeah, yellow stars are all the research sites that we've been able to implement over the past 20 plus years. So we've instrumented in collaboration with the City of Guelph and some of our neighboring communities. We've been adding this infrastructure and adding to the groundwater flow model in this community. And on the right-hand side, we see a close-up view of this urban center. The red dots represent the municipal water supply wells, and you can see that we've got wells pretty much across campus and throughout the city. And it's a multi-scale endeavor, so we take many samples and work at the scale of a fracture, but also move it up to the scale of the flow system, and this is where we really understand the linkages to the other components of the hydrologic cycle with our colleagues that are experts in surface water and meteorology and so on. And these photos just represent the types of tools that we send down the boreholes to inform our system. So this brings us to our field facility, the building on the left, on the right, your right. And it's located in the Arboretum adjacent to our campus here, and it's served us well for the last 15 years. And this is the vision. The vision that we'd like to complete is to make this a fully functioning facility, not only supporting the research, but also having this classroom and the ability to access boreholes out in the yards around this facility. Sorry. And this is a view of the classroom that we're about to build and has the capacity for these workshops and conferences and classrooms. And then right in the corner there, we can open up those glass doors and access a borehole and do demonstrations with people having the ability to try things out themselves. So this is our vision for engaging folks with a hands-on experience, and for public outreach, we've got displays of continuous cores, one of our favorite tools that we use to characterize the subsurface, as well as a replica of the subsurface geology here in Guelph, so that people can start to relate to the aquifer in which we are pulling our drinking water from. And here we're getting things staged and fabricated to go out to these field sites. So we do a lot of shipping to these remote locations, and it also gives us space to lay things out and inspect them in detail. outreach, technology transfer, conferences, and so on. We engage the others as much as we can. This is one of my favorite outreach pictures because about a decade ago we worked with the Scouts Canada and we actually made a multi-layered cake and used plexiglass tubes to core into the subsurface, and we had hidden jelly beans and things like that. So it really engaged the kids in an exciting way. So this is the financials that we have so far. With Ted's contribution, we've got the money to start this classroom, and now we're trying to realize the rest of the funding needed to finish the project and then build the resources we need to operate here. Okay. So we need your help to realize our goal. And so whether it's direct or indirect support in terms of building this financial contribution, you're our best ambassadors for what we're trying to achieve, and I hope we can engage in conversations on how we might realize these funds. There we go. So with that, I'd like to say thank you all for coming, and thank you for your continued interest in groundwater and collaboration, and I hope to have a chance to speak to you all this afternoon. So it's with great pleasure I get to introduce one of our long-standing collaborators, and that's Darren Juneau from Aardvark, to say a few words about our synergy. Yes, thank you.
Thanks very much for that, Beth, for the introduction. Very glad to be here. I'm here with my business partners, Adrian Richards and Matt England as well. And yes, it has been a long duration of collaboration. I think Beth pointed out that she came here in 2007, and I had to go through my emails to see when was the first time we had any interaction. It was 2008. So I was trying to remember. I'm pretty sure I had hair at that time. So I was like, I think I was younger, ready to rock and roll, and this was a perfect opportunity for us to talk. So the facility that's there now, we got involved with the actual, the drilling side of stuff for the geotechnical investigation to build that building. So that was kind of our first interaction with each other. And then that led to all of these different interactions over the years. And really that's what I wanted to talk about today, was in my 5 to 10 minutes, is about the collaboration that we've had between Beth and G360 and Aardvark Drilling. And I think by and large, most of the boreholes and core samples that you've taken, definitely in the Guelph area, have been drilled by Aardvark Drilling. And it's a real win for us and our staff, because we have an opportunity to be a part of the investigation procedure and really kind of give back to the university and into the field research that's being conducted, which is a lot of times not afforded to us in an industrial situation. So very quickly, like I said, 2008, we did some research out there and drilled the original investigation well, and found there is a buried bedrock valley out there, which was interesting. There's a local house, I don't know, maybe 100 meters away, and the potable water well there, bedrock, was about 20 feet. I believe it was 18 feet by my recollection. So when Beth and I were, how deep is it going to be to bedrock? Because this would be a perfect spot for a bedrock aquifer facility, because rock's going to be at 20 feet. It turned out it was 143 feet down. So we found something that we didn't know was going to be there, and instantly we're like, wow, this is going to be fun. This is a great journey. And we went from that into an opportunity to send staff to Florida and South Carolina, which, again, these are opportunities that I get to bring to my coworkers, because generally, there's that 9 to 5 grind, and if I can bring something exciting and new to the people that I work with inside of my business, it's so refreshing for them to get a chance to do that. And then in 2010 to 2014, I don't know, there was a lot of stuff going on as far as actually drilling was concerned, but that we stayed in touch the entire time. We were doing a bunch of training programs together, like the OSHA 40-hour HAZWOPER training, anything along those lines, just to keep us involved and keep the lines of communication open. And in 2010, we did some work in Base Borden, and actually, I believe we were at that time introduced to University of Kansas, I think it was a gentleman that. So again, this is this collaboration that we get with working with Beth and the university. 2011, Arkell, we did a 150-meter deep hole out there, so that's another nice opportunity for us. 2013 was the Scout Camp. I think we did some CMT construction as well, which is an opportunity for us to use some different tools and see what's out there. And then kind of a peak, and I'm chagrined to say that Beth had to remind me of it, like the reason that we're here is that if we can help push this project to completion. In 2015, I was the president of the Ontario Groundwater Association, and I had approached Beth and said, hey, would your team be interested in, if we have a convention in Guelph, would you be interested in giving us a tour of the Bedrock Aquifer Field Facility and, maybe have a couple little stations set up? And the outpouring of help and support from Beth and the staff was fantastic. So we ended up having the convention in Guelph, as I had said. I managed to convince, I think, 50 or 60 people to walk from the Delta Hotel all the way over to the field facility. I thought it was I was like, it'd be a quick 45-minute walk. It'd be no problem. But I had a few angry faces on the way there. But when we got there, the proof really was in what we were doing, and it was so great to have that interaction. And I actually found an email for one of the things to speak volumes for Beth, because again, the reason we're so excited about doing this as a industry is the recognition that we get back from Beth and her coworkers. Because a lot of times we're just perceived as boots on the ground, blue collar, and we don't get a chance to flex our intellect. But she had said, I think we had a good time for us as a group, and we benefited from the exposure to a very experienced group of field-oriented groundwater colleagues. So an excellent opportunity for conversations that day and into the future. That has stuck with me since 2015 because of how important that is to my industry and the desire to do more with the university. And I apologize that it didn't even occur to me to reach out to my old contacts and let's get this over the hurdle. 2017, some Century wells in Guelph, 229 PQ deep holes, another deep hole in Aberfoyle. 2019, we had the opportunity to work in the Oak Ridges Moraine with the team. Very interesting stuff. Again, maybe to people that aren't in the drilling field, we started off drilling small diameter, which would be like NQ, HQ, PQ, and now we're up to SQ coring, which is in essence a 6-inch diameter core that is not done. Like, we are kind of bringing this technology to light and to use in industry. And again, the benefit for us is that we get an opportunity to train our staff and to show people what can be done, and then take that and bring it into the industry, which is nice because as we talk about the connection between surface water and groundwater, and also the interaction of contaminants and how it gets in there, when we can bring more and better stuff to the actual work that's being done by the engineering firms and drilling companies, it's just fantastic. And then finally, I'll touch on in 2020, we did a project in Center Wellington. And this was an opportunity where I didn't elaborate on some of the other ones, but we've become aware that when something comes to us now, we're like, hey, this would be a good opportunity to approach the university and say, are you interested in getting in on this job? So if we see something that comes our way that might be interesting, we can bring it now to Beth and the team, because we know we're going to get some positive feedback back, and then we can go as a collaborating group to, in this case, municipal government, and bring way more to the table than what we could have just as a standard drilling company. So Beth, on behalf of Aardvark Drilling, we are just pleased beyond belief to be a part of this, and thank you very much. Thanks. Thank you.
Thank you, Darren, so much for that, for being such a great partner and a donor to this project. Thank you, President Yates, and to Dr. Parker, and to Ted again. And thank you, everyone watching online with our busy live stream. We're going to take a 20-minute break right now. Please grab yourself a beverage and some refreshments. There's also 4 or 5 informational booths about all the other amazing work that G360 does, both on campus, in the community, and around the world. Please make yourself to those booths and introduce yourself. 20 minutes, and we're going to come back for the second half. Thank you so much. To this.
Can we do it in front of the podium? Have them stand in front, block it?
You tell me, probably.
Welcome, everyone. Please grab a snack, grab your drinks, and grab a seat, and we will begin with the rest of the program shortly.
Welcome back. Thanks everybody again for being here with us today. We've got 3 more exciting 10-minute presentations to really wrap up everything that we're doing here today. I'd like to welcome first Bruce Davidson, the co-founder of Concerned Walkerton Citizens, to share a little bit of his history with both the University of Guelph and our community and G360. Welcome, Bruce.
Thank you so much. I'm absolutely honored to be here today. I'm just going to put my props down. I was an art student, don't boo yet, at the university many, many years ago, just after we invented fire. So it was a very creative time. Met my wife here, my daughter met her fiance here. We are indebted to Guelph in a big, big way. So what I'd like to do today is start off by congratulating you. As someone who suffered at the hands of the mismanagement of water and had a community that was nearly destroyed, I want to tell you that what you're doing is absolutely crucial to our future. You are going to be helping people who right now don't know you exist. And this expansion into your new center is going to do just that. You're going to pave the way to safe water for generations to come, and that is really, really important. So when we look at the catalyst, tons of hard work has gone into getting you to where you are today with your institute in developing that, and that is absolutely laudable, and let's push that over the finish line. But what was the catalyst to get us here? Sadly, it was the tragedy in Walkerton in the year 2000. Back then, I actually had some overburden on the top of my head, but it is severely eroded. And my daughter would give me the same characterization as a bad watershed where, contamination and exhaustion and all those sort of things are coming into play. But back in the year 2000, we were living our lives just as any small town would, minding our own business and thinking that we had it covered. Unfortunately, contamination entered our drinking water system with E. coli, Campylobacter, and Salmonella, and we lost 7 people in a heartbeat. Half our town was made ill. In some cases, those illnesses continue to today. Our reputation was destroyed, our economy was brutalized, and we had to find our way out of that hole. And what Walkerton really was a huge wake-up call for the Western world. When the crisis hit, we had media here from Canada, from the United States, from Europe. I did interviews with media from as far away as South Korea. Why were they here? They were here because they could not believe that a wealthy nation was killing people with their drinking water. So it was this wake-up call where we said, you know what? Bad water isn't just over there in the most impoverished corners of the world. It's here, it's now. We could understand why it happened there, because they didn't have the financial resources, the skilled people, the finances to buy the equipment, the regulatory system. We supposedly had all that, and yet we still stumbled into disaster. So we don't have the 6-hour course time, because some of you might have a weekend in mind, to actually probe the technical failings that led us to this disaster. But what I'd like to do is take a quick look at the mindset that led us to this disaster, because that's the battle we have to win. Is it okay to assume that the care and management of our water is a non-professional activity? Clearly, we demonstrated that it was not. So if we could just roll the video, of well 5, that would be great. What you're looking at is a submersible camera view of well 5 that allowed the contamination into our water. You can see the propeller there, and that is the turbidity monitor. As we get towards the top, we're going to see that start to move very vigorously, and we'll see what looks like grains of sand coming in through the side of the well, where there is a breach about 2 to 3 meters below the surface. This well was intentionally drilled shallow to get at soft water. It provided us contaminated, deadly water. And you'll see that that's starting to build now, coming in through that breach, directly beside agricultural land that would have been treated and had products with bacteria in it. So if we can stop that right about there. I do sessions regularly and actually have been this whole week up at the Walkerton Clean Water Centre with students, and I stop it there and I ask them, would you drink that? And the kids say, of course we wouldn't drink that. It's nasty, it's disgusting. And I say to them, what about if by the time that got to your house, it had settled and it looked crystal clear? It didn't taste bad and it didn't smell bad. Nothing in your human sensory array would tell you that that could kill you. Would you drink it then? And they say, well, yeah, I guess you would. That's what happened. We drank the water without knowing. We drank it trusting. Our trust was betrayed. Half our community got sick. 7 people died in one horrific incident. A lady and her husband attended a Walkerton restaurant with their little girl, just a toddler. Not even 2, I don't believe. They didn't live in Walkerton. They just came to celebrate Mother's Day. That little girl drank 1 glass of water. 10 days later, as she had gotten progressively sicker and sicker, in the emergency department, in the intensive care department in the hospital in London, Ontario, she died in her mother's arms from 1 glass of water. The work that you are doing is important and it is vital. Let's move to the first slide. So we want to understand how we got there. This is the same well you saw from the inside, from the outside. This is well number 5 from the air. You can see that it is adjacent to agricultural fields. The angle of the camera shot makes it look that it's further away than it is, but the distance to the fields are the distance from me to the first group of people sitting here. No source protection whatsoever. Did Walkerton bumble into this with no information that this could be a problematic location? Well, they didn't have the indigenous knowledge within the organization to do that, or the institutional knowledge, but they were warned. They were warned that if you place a well in this location next to agricultural fields, you're looking for trouble. Rezone that land or purchase it and take it out of agricultural production. 20 years, nothing happened. The video you just saw of the inside of the well, when was that recommended to be done? 10 years before the tragedy. It was done after the tragedy. We prided ourselves on cheap water, and we hoped that it would be good. The well is actually in low-lying swampy land, and I was there yesterday with a group of students, and it sounds like a small waterfall when you hear the springs running by that emanate in the fields just adjacent to it. So we were set up for a disaster from day one without heeding the warnings. They also said monitor the well for turbidity. Did that look like a well that was being carefully monitored for turbidity? Chlorinate. Chlorination was random at best and falsified most of the time. The disaster was baked in. When we had the heavy rains in the year 2000, that water rushing through the soils and towards the well went right to our houses. So if we can go to the next slide, please. This is the Walkerton Water Tower as it existed back in the year 2000. And the assumption was that, we can just back up again. My problem as a dyslexic is things don't always do what I think they should do. Children, typewriters, anything like that. Then slides just jump ahead randomly. But that water tower, we were assuming would have safe, clean water in it. In the May of the year 2000, nothing could have been further from the truth. And what happened was we fell prey to what I call the 3 deadly beliefs. And they are as follows. If you don't intend to do harm, you will do no harm. No one intended to harm anyone in Walkerton as they broke all the regulations, didn't reclassify the well as under the influence of surface water, didn't rezone the land, didn't do proper testing. And guess what? Who knew about that? The Ministry of Environment knew we were under testing. The town officials knew. The Public Utilities Commission knew. The town itself knew. Guess who didn't know? The people of Walkerton. So they thought that you would actively have to sabotage a well for anything to go wrong and for people to be seriously ill. People get hurt all the time. Go home and watch the news. You'll see dozens of examples, if you watch long enough, of people being injured and dying when there was no desire to do anything of the sort. The other thing that we tend to do too often is we assume that if I don't do my job in the provision of safe water, the next guy along the line will catch my mistake. What happens when everybody thinks that same way? Again, with the regulations that we weren't following, everyone knew, the Public Utilities Commission, the town, the workers, the Ministry of Environment that wrote them up in reports several times for being out of compliance. But guess what? Nothing was done because we were under voluntary compliance regulations at the time. So as I came into Guelph today, if I came downtown up Gordon Street doing 150 kilometers an hour, and the police pulled me over and said to me, you know, Bruce, the suggested speed limit is 50. No, they would lock me up and take the car. But with water, which is crucial to our existence, Let's let them voluntarily comply to do what they need to do. And we didn't. So that water tower looks a lot like a silo not of excellence, but a silo of ignorance and a silo of arrogance, where we don't want any information from the outside because we're doing just fine, impervious to that kind of information, and that leads us down the road to that disaster. So that overall line of thinking, the last one in that trio that's so deadly, is the precautions we take are commensurate with the threat we perceive. No threat was perceived in Walkerton from bad water. The gentleman running the well system worked for the Public Utilities Commission, where they were trained with electricity, not with water. You mess around with electricity, you can get electrocuted. You can start a fire. With water, they thought there was no consequence. The government wasn't far behind. So we had this idea where we are baking in a tragedy even before it happens. So what happens? We have this disaster. And when we have the disaster, what ends up happening is we're now in crisis. Crisis is not a good place to start the conversation about safe drinking water and sustainable drinking water. Why? Because people are dying. People are terrified. They're traumatized. People are ill. Your entire town is shut down. And blame rules the day. Those involved are defending their positions and trying to blame others. You're not building towards sustainable protected water. So hopefully if this starts dancing, and it's not the technician's fault, it's my slideshow doing it. If we can go to that very last slide, there we are. Now I commissioned this drawing at great expense, so pay attention, folks. So what if instead of meeting in crisis, we met in conversation? You can do that. With your new center, you can invite the conversation, and that's where we start. Why do we need to start the conversation? Trust in government and institutions has never been lower. Start the conversation, and with the conversation will come education. Then when we get to know each other and trust each other, let's talk about consultation. And finally, we can come to consensus. Let's skip the tragedy. Let's skip the death toll. Let's do this the right way this time. You have the ability to open your doors and do that, and that is going to be vital. Now, you can see that these stick people around the table, they're very interested in wells. And they should be interested in wells because if you look, they're all severely dehydrated. And so it's important that we get them some water. But the problem with these stick people is that their views are often disregarded. People think they're two-dimensional. And you know, you can joke about that, but when you look at water and who should be involved, who should be around the table, who are the stakeholders in safe, sustainable drinking water? Let's reverse the question. Who is not a stakeholder in the drinking water future? It's everyone, but yet again, if you listen to the media, you'll hear almost every day some group that feels that it has not been consulted adequately in the progress of some kind of development, whatever it is. When we formed the Concerned Walkerton Citizens Group, and we started to gain some traction with the media, and we were demanding the inquiry, and we were demanding answers, the government of the day, in an effort to discredit us, said that we were a special interest group. So we said, yes, we are a special interest group. We are that group of people who like to drink water and live. There's a lot of us, and we're not going away. So it is so important that we get this piece right, and you can do that. And why do I look at this and say the education piece and the knowledge sharing is so important? I was on the Joint Waste Management Committee between Hanover and Walkerton. We were expanding the landfill. We were holding consultations with the public, and we were talking about the measures we were taking to protect the aquifer and our groundwater and the adjacent Saugeen River that runs right next to the landfill. Great planning back there. And so we talked about a liner to collect the leachate and funnel that leachate into a tank and pump it then into trucks and take it away and put it through our sewage treatment plants. We talked about the test wells we had drilled to make sure we weren't contaminating the groundwater and all the sampling we were doing in the river. But with all that, people, rightfully so, were still concerned about groundwater contamination and contamination of our river. And one person put up their hand and they were sure they had the answer to this, that we could avoid all potential contamination. They said, why don't you just put the well, or not the well, put the landfill outside of the watershed? Now, I looked on a map, and the only place that I can find that is actually outside the watershed is a town called Wishful Thinking. You can't jump out of the environment and get away from the question. Let's give people that base level of understanding that they need to move forward in protecting their water collectively. We need to build this team. The other thing that I found as I've traveled across the country speaking about water to a variety of groups, often when you speak to water operators, they know their profession and they know it well. But you ask about source protection, and often they will refer to a treatment modality, not source protection. You speak to local officials about where their water comes from, where their groundwater comes from, they don't know in many cases. You have a story to tell, and it needs to be told to all of these people. Boreholes are not boring. Think about it. You're bringing up a capsule that tells you your past and tells you your future and tells you how to get there safely. I heard that a borehole was recently drilled so deep that it found evidence of the Leafs getting past the second round of the playoffs. So, I mean, this is tremendous progress that we're making. So, what do we need to do as we move forward? We need to do that education piece. We need to do that collaboration piece. And I'm one to talk about not knowing the jargon of hydrogeology and all that is involved with our groundwater. Up until very recently, I believed that an aquitard was the description of the pattern on a mermaid's kilt. I was wrong. And most mermaids aren't even Scottish. So, there you go. So where do we go from here with our collaborations? Imagine you open your center and you open the doors to it. And we start talking, as already has happened informally, with the Walkerton Clean Water Centre. Together we tell the whole water story. Where does it go before we treat it? Or where does it come from before we treat it? How do we deal with that? How are they, right now as we speak, they have the teachers from the region on a PD day at the Clean Water Centre. You can do the same thing. I've been up there with students for the past 2 weeks, almost every day, teaching them about the importance of taking care of our water. So they are willing to collaborate. They will share the knowledge they have with dealing with the First Nations communities and collaborating, which is vital to where you're going. What about environmental law? I'm with Canadian Environmental Law Association. Our executive director unfortunately couldn't make it today, but she has pledged to come down and hold seminars at your center so that the public and the engineers and all the people involved understand the need for law reform, for policy changes, and how we can influence these processes as we move forward. We have Wellington Water Watches. Put your hand up in the front row. This is a lady you need to know. There's lots of people you need to know. The local lived experience is totally invaluable to where we're going. Imagine driving onto the grounds of your new center and you pull into the parking lot, and the parking lot is not paved, it's not concrete, but it's made out of a water-permeable grid that just happens to be made of recycled plastic that allows the water to go right back into the aquifer, and it's made right here in Listowel, just down the road. We need to get this idea into the hands of people and demonstrate it and hold seminars and teach people that there are things they can do right now. And where are you, Mike? Just put your hand up so people can see. Mike Coates back there, happy to talk to you about it. We've been using this product for years. Great thing is you don't put any salt on it in the winter. The water goes back and melts through. The only problem with this product is when you wash it in hot water, it shrinks a little, but it makes a great drink coaster. So opening that tent is going to be just so valuable. First Nations, we need to get through the block we have. We need to understand, they need to understand us. We need to have those conversations to move forward. So that's what I hope you can do, and I know you can do. And why? Because I don't want anybody to go through what we went through in Walkerton, that terrible disaster. I don't want them to have that traumatizing experience that I found myself in, where midway through the crisis, I'm standing in my backyard, and I'm trying to console my 9-year-old, who's crying his heart out. He is beyond consoling. Why? Because he's looking up into the sky across the park to the hospital. And he's watching an air ambulance helicopter lift off. And he'd seen far too many of this. This was now the 4th person within 100 yards of my house to be airlifted. This time, it was his best friend in that helicopter. And he said, through his tears, he said, "Dad, is he going to die?" And I couldn't tell him that he wasn't. And I could not tell my son that he wasn't going to be next. And as a parent, you know that you want to do everything in your power to protect your children. You don't let somebody come into your town or something come into your town and kill a whole bunch of people, make the others sick, devastate the economy, and say, as our mayor of the day did, it was just the heavy rains. And then he asked me why it happened. And I had no answer. And that's not good enough. You are going to be the answer to a lot of these questions. You are going to be the prevention of a lot of these crises with the knowledge that you will share and the outreach that will come from this new center. And that's going to be vital. And yes, you're going to do great innovation. And yes, you're going to do great research. But you're going to build bridges to a path for safe drinking water for the future. Can you do it? Yes, you can. Because you know down deep what really matters. Thank you for your time.
Bruce, thank you. Thank you for those poignant words about a very black period in our province's history. Thank you for speaking so eloquently about it. We really appreciate it. Our next speaker is, pardon me, Adam Gilmore, the Manager of Engineering from the Township of Centre Wellington. Adam, please join us.
Yes, thank you very much, and wow, what a presentation, Bruce. And as a person working in municipal government and working and helping my community to manage water resources, and that really is just a sobering reminder of what it is that we're doing and the importance of what we're doing. So thank you very much, and not that I need to be reminded, but good to hear those words nonetheless. So thank you. So I wanted to start here with a picture of the Bedrock Aquifer Field Facility, and I'll tell you a bit about who I am and where I came from. But I was Beth's, along with Laura Zimmerman right here, Beth's first students at the University of Guelph. So when Beth had recently come over to the University of Guelph from the University of Waterloo, we started here, and she knew I was a graduate of the School of Engineering at the University of Waterloo, and she said to me, you're an engineer, right? You took engineering? I said, yes. Well, I need you to design a building for me. And I said, I was keen, and I wanted to kind of show my new research advisor here that I could do things. So I said, yeah, no problem, I can do that. But little did she know I was like a D student at best in my structural engineering building science courses at Waterloo. That's hence why I went to the water side of things. So nonetheless, I did some AutoCAD drawings, drew up a sketch of this facility, and it amazingly, what I drew actually kind of looks like what was built here. So anyways, very proud to be a part of that history and excited to see what lies ahead for that facility. And okay, this works, great. So I work for the Township of Centre Wellington. So where are we located? We're just north of the city of Guelph, in the heart of Wellington County. And we're a community of about 31,000 people, and we're growing. We're like all communities on the periphery of the GTA, we're forecasted to grow our population significantly, and we're going to double our population roughly by 2041. So there are challenges associated with that, of course. Oh, want to point out also, communities of Fergus and Elora, and Fergus is famous for being the home of Matt England of Aardvark Drilling. So, and he's right there. Okay, so I manage the engineering team, and what do we do? So this is our little superhero tagline here. I can't remember it, so I have to read it. We serve our community by planning, designing, building the infrastructure that they need to go about their daily lives. So that's everything. So that's roads, bridges, water, wastewater services, and also water supply. And I want to highlight that item. And, like other growing communities, we need more water resources to serve our growing population. So we're a 100% groundwater supplied community. We have a series of 9 municipal wells. And we need to grow our ability to take more water for our community. So we're going out and we're investigating new well areas in the periphery of our community, and I'm going to come back to this a little bit later in the presentation. But I want to talk a little bit about how I got here. So I mentioned already University of Waterloo, so I took civil engineering there. I graduated. I didn't feel like I was ready to go into like life mode yet and just start working and doing all those things. I wanted to, I wanted to learn a little bit more. So I through a colleague, I was working at a consulting company that summer called Conestoga Rovers in Waterloo, and I had a great colleague there named Hamid Salsali. And he said, I met these researchers, Dr. Beth Parker and Dr. John Cherry, and you really want to talk to them. You really need to meet with them. So then he kind of connected me with Beth, and I met Beth in Guelph, and we had a drink, and she told me all about all the great work that was happening here. And I was hooked, and so I signed up. I think we met in July, and by September I was here. And there we go. So then I did my master's here. I stayed on working as a research project manager for a while, which was a great experience, but I wanted to spread my wings a little bit and kind of see what was going on out in the consulting world. So I joined a consulting company called Environ, which was in the GTA, which did, was a kind of a standard environmental consulting company, did site investigations and looking at groundwater contamination and remediation, all these things. But then a really significant thing happened to me in my life. And I had a baby with my wife. This is Ella, our daughter, and very cute picture of her right after she was born. And this really changed my everything for me. So I was working for this consulting company. I was traveling all over the place to these different sites, but then I realized, I wanted to be closer to home and kind of home every night. So I started looking at what other jobs can I do. And this great opportunity came up at Halton Region. And Halton is the communities of Oakville, Burlington, Milton, and Halton Hills. And there was an opportunity to go there and manage their water resources planning team. So they dealt with their well water resources, some of the surface water resources also. My role there evolved a little bit, and I started kind of taking on a little different responsibilities in wastewater planning, and then ultimately transportation planning. So kind of grew into more of that kind of traditional engineering type job. But I'd been commuting for about 10 years. I lived in Guelph the whole time, commuting for about 10 years, over an hour to work each way, and I needed something closer to home. So job came up at Township of Center Wellington, and it was the perfect fit for me. So I moved there a couple of years ago, and that's where I am now. But I want to talk a little bit about the work that I did while I was here at the University of Guelph in the G360 group. So I had the opportunity to do field-focused research, like many students who come through here, and had a great opportunity to go down to a site in Florence, South Carolina. And this was a site, it was a sand and clay site where there was an aged DNAPL plume. They had done some work remediating the source zone and isolating it. And then at that time, Beth and John and Steve Chapman and others were really focused on this effect of back diffusion. So you have a plume that's been in the ground for a while. You have higher permeability sand with a lower permeability clay aquitard. There's diffusion of the contaminants into the clay aquitard. And then once you isolate the source, what's the impact of the diffusion of those contaminants out of the low permeability back into the high permeability, causing persistence of these plumes? So it can cause persistence in the range of, tens, hundreds, thousands of years. So it's a very important thing to understand, and we wanted to do that work at this site. So what did we do? Well, I went out there with Steve Chapman, and I didn't know much about any of this, and Steve really kind of showed me the ropes out there. And so we pulled core out of the ground, and then we would bring it up, and then we'd log it in detail, and we'd start collecting these samples in the soil. And we're collecting samples like every inch, right? And 30 feet of borehole, collecting a sample every inch. And I thought at the time, like, isn't this overkill? Like, what are we doing here? This takes forever, and what's the point of this? But there is a point, and to understand these sites and the important processes that are happening, you have to get to that level of resolution in terms of this high resolution characterization. So, not intending for anybody to really take a close look at this, but just to show you what it looks like, this is a profile of concentration with depth, and you can see, you've got these spikes in concentration that are happening over relatively short distances. And so in this case, we've got primary contaminants here that are diffusing into this clay aquitard, but then we're very interested to see, we've got this accumulation of degradation products in the aquitard also. We've got some residual DNAPL that's outside of the source zone. So to really understand how this site is going to behave over time, this is the resolution that you need, and this is the type of work that you need to do. So I really gained a real respect and appreciation for this type of work and the value in it. Also did some work in fractured bedrock in the Guelph area. So in this area, and same in Center Wellington, it's the same aquifer. It's conceptualized as kind of a two aquifer system. You've got this upper Guelph formation, which is kind of a surface aquifer, the Aramasa member, which is conceptualized as a regional aquitard, and then underlain by the Goat Island and Gasport formations, which are considered confined aquifers. But, you can't understand this just by looking at core alone. You need hydraulic data to actually identify these aquitards. And so that's the image here. It's showing a profile of hydraulic head with depth from a multi-level well. If you have a big open well and you look at the water level in it, well, that's a blended water level. That's just giving you one data point. If you collect information at multiple depths, well, now you can start to see what's happening hydraulically. And that's the only way to truly identify these aquitards. And they're not always where you think they are. So here's a profile from a core hole that we did in Guelph. And, if you were to log the core, you find the Aramasa member, you say, here's my aquitard. But then looking at the hydraulic data, that wasn't the case. It was actually lower in the Goat Island formation. So you look at the Goat Island formation, looks like a fractured dolostone aquifer, but not the case. Hydraulically, it doesn't behave like that. It actually behaves as an aquitard. So you need this type of information to really understand these systems. And we had a lot of fun doing this too. We spent time at different places and we working with the field crews and meeting tons of people from all over the world, having a little bit of downtime here and there, getting to go camping and do these fun things. And, I can't say enough about how much I appreciated Steve Chapman and the mentorship that he provided and just the fun that we had, and others like Ryan Croker and Bob Ingleton, Paul Johnson. We worked hard and we had a lot of fun doing this research work. So I want to just speak quickly here about just my experience in consulting and just really kind of an event that I was part of that really was very humbling, kind of opened my eyes to the world and just the bad things that can happen. But I did get to participate in the Lac-Mégantic rail disaster and some of the efforts there. So I was there about 5 days after the disaster as part of a team that was trying to contain the spilled oil and trying to characterize the contamination that had happened. And that was a very dynamic situation. It was never lost on me that there were a number of people that were killed in this incident also. So we were there trying to contain this contamination, but with the sobering reality that there had already been a number of people that were killed in this accident. So just a great reminder for me, just the importance of what we are doing, and to echo some of what Bruce was saying, just the responsibility. In terms of the bad things that can happen, and how as environmental professionals, it is our job to try and prevent these things, and when they do happen, to try and act and help. And finally, Center Wellington. So that's where I am now. And so what are we up to? So I did mention earlier that we're investigating these new well areas. And we're very lucky to be working with Aardvark Drilling on the project, so the premier drilling company in southern Ontario. And I don't say that lightly, and I could probably lose my job actually for saying that. Being in municipal government, I'm supposed to be impartial, but I love working with Aardvark and had a long history working with them, and very proud to be continuing to work with them, doing the important work in Center Wellington that we're doing. And I really lobbied my peers at the township to do more when it came to investigating these new well areas. So we are collecting continuous core. We're doing the full suite of geophysics to understand, the flow system and where the flow is coming from. Are there aquitards present? And installing multi-level wells. And some of the key questions here, are there aquatards present? Are there changes in water quality with depth that we need to understand before we put a municipal well there? Connection to surface water, shallow groundwater, obviously things that we don't want. And interference with private wells and impacts to the environment. We want to ensure that our water taking is sustainable and not causing impacts. And then finally, I got to throw a picture of my kids here, of course. So Ella is quite a bit older now, so she's 7. This is my son Noah, he's 5. Ella's actually here on campus today. It's a PD day, so she's at the University of Guelph camp. So right before I got in here, I actually found her, and I totally embarrassed her by saying hi to her, and she was trying to play it cool like she didn't know me, but that's okay. All right, so what did I learn in my time at G360? So field-focused research teaches you so much, teaches you so much as an individual about yourself, and you learn a lot, and you can go out into the world and apply that knowledge, and you can share that knowledge also with other people. Smart people from all over the world come here to learn and contribute. I love the map that Beth threw up of just the different parts of the world people are coming from, and it's pretty amazing that they're coming here. And it's when you're working in hydrogeology, contaminant hydrogeology, it's always very humbling, and you never really understand. You never really know what's happening underground. But good data really does help to formulate the best picture you can. And high resolution site characterization is worth it, and we should do it, and we are doing it. Thank you.
Adam, thank you so much. That was fantastic. Great insights into your career. So many amazing stories of alumni from the Morwick G360 group, yourself included. Thanks for what you're doing to keep us all safe in Centre Wellington. Our final guest speaker today is Chris Turner from a very long-term partner of G360, Haley and Aldrich. Chris, the floor is yours.
Yeah, thank you. A few minutes ago, as we were preparing for this last session, Steve Chapman came up to me and looked at the speaking list and said, "So, you're the distinguished alum." And I thought, uh-oh, that'll make this any harder than it needs to be. But I wanted to take a few minutes to reflect on how the unique approach that Morwick G360 takes to student training and education really has impacts on the world of environmental consulting, which, as you saw from Beth's slide earlier, roughly half or a little more than half of us end up going in consulting. So, although I'm not a particularly distinguished alumni, particularly compared to the brilliant people in this room and the people that have already spoken, I do think some of the things I'm saying will resonate with a lot of us. And like many of us, I came into this field because hydrogeology was one of the most directly applicable fields to address problems that we face as a society, mainly water quality and water quantity. And although I had my heart set on doing graduate studies somewhere in the mountains or next to an ocean or overseas, it took about 5 minutes after visiting with Beth and seeing the facility that she and John and others had put together and the work that came before to make me realize this is the place you have to be in order to be able to not only learn about things, but be able to apply them immediately. And so some examples of that. As an early graduate student, I was able to come in here, learn from some courses, and right away having meetings with industry sponsors. I was negotiating with contractors, coordinated efforts of support staff, which is really other grad students, just as I was their support staff, so I get to learn it on many levels. And collaborating with government and academic and private parties throughout the process. So it would take about 5 to 10 years to have that similar breadth of experience if I had just gone straight into consulting. So, but I think the most important part of that is not just the breadth of experience, but just thinking about this hierarchy of learning. If you do a course-based study, you're lucky, you're really focusing on the bottom 2 tiers. You're gonna memorize, you're gonna learn, you're gonna understand. If you're lucky, in maybe a lab setting, or if you've got an ability to do a project, you're tapping into that middle tier, which is applying the knowledge. And usually it's some portion of knowledge, not all of that. But what we're able to do here in this setting is really take that all the way, because we're not just learning about something, we're actually using it, we're doing it in the process of learning about it. And it's iterative. I think that's the important thing. It's not a linear. We keep going back. Well, I don't know this. I better go ask the expert down the hall. I better go ask my fellow grad student who's doing something really cool and might have some insights on this. And so that process really puts you can't force innovation, right? That's at the top of the tier, to create something new. But what you can do is, it's like leading a horse to water, right? You can make the conditions that are right for innovation to occur, and that's what happens here. So I definitely had the feeling, and still do, that the work that's being done here really allows people to create that background knowledge, and have collaboration with their both other researchers and students, and get them to the point where not only can you come up with ideas, but you can actually implement them. You can create them, you can test them out, and then go back and do it over again. So I think looking at my other fellow consultants in here, I'm sure can relate to this. Some of the benefits in my industry, I mean, you come in, you not only hit the ground running, but you have a level of confidence and understanding that you can it's an approach to tackling the problem. It's not just saying I have this knowledge and I'm going to apply it. It's really an approach to understanding it and learning something, because the field is constantly changing, as we learned the last few days through the research that the group's doing. And another really important part of that is a lot of the work I do is with regulators and stakeholders. And so being able to develop relationships of mutual respect with them that's based on a common appreciation for scientific inquiry really can kind of de-escalate that adversarial relationship that can get set up. So that collaboration, I think once, I remember once I was in one of Beth's classes, and we broke up into groups of 4, and 3 countries are represented in at least 3 countries in every group, which is fantastic. So that once you have that feeling of learning from a group of energized people with diverse backgrounds, it doesn't leave you. So you're always seeking that collaboration, and I think that travels with us through our career. And in another way, it really helps us in being able to, from a technical standpoint, to be able to focus on the key questions of what we need to know to understand what a site conceptual model is, rather than just applying, these are the tools that we apply to every site, and we clean it up this way, whether it works or not. So we're able to hopefully steer discussions and steer the dollars and the energy that people are putting in toward making the world a better place and the human health and the environment. So I just want to close by thanking G360, Mr. Morwick, who was here earlier, and Beth for continuing this critical work, as other people have said better than me, with things like climate change, changing the way water is distributed around the planet even faster than the climate models initially predicted, and the emergence of new contaminants that, well, they aren't new, but we're just learning about them, that are pretty ubiquitous. It's never been more critical to continue the work. And I always come here looking for students because they understand, they know they can apply, and they can really make a difference right away. So, thanks.
I hope Beth is still here and can come back up and join me for a bit of a wrap-up. I'm realizing I never introduced myself, so sorry to the room and the stream. My name is Dan Penfold. I'm the Development Manager for the College of Engineering and Alumni Affairs here at the University of Guelph. It's my pleasure to get to work with our thousands of alumni of this college, this university, and especially with G360. I'm going to say a few words, and then I'm going to give it over to Beth to wrap things up. Seems a bit of a surprise to both of us, but the work that I do and that everyone in this room does is so important. A theme I've seen running through today is that this facility and this institute mean a different thing to almost everyone in this space. It means something to citizens and individuals. It means a different thing to academics, and it's something yet again to the consulting world and others. This institute and the future of Morwick G360 is critical, not just to the campus life and the future at Guelph, but also to the larger population of our province, country, and world. As you heard the President mention earlier, we are very close to our fundraising goal. I am in Alumni Affairs, so of course I'm going to bring it back to that. We need everyone in this room's help to get us over that line and to see that building materialize in the Arboretum in the near term. I think she mentioned 80%. We're very, very close to that. Thank you to all the donors that have gotten us to where we are now. Everyone in this room, if you are an individual or you have a partner or a network or a business that can help us contribute to that cause, please get in touch if you have not yet. Please tap a friend who may be interested in supporting us as well. All gifts to this cause are completely tax receivable. We could talk about those details offline. Thank you so much again for attending today, for being part of this community with us. It means the world. Beth, thank you.
You're welcome. It's been a real pleasure working with Dan. He does all the things I don't know how to do. And I think the big change coming out of COVID is finally getting to work together in person, and that is such a big deal. For me anyway. I don't know if it's because I'm on the older side of life or I think it's just human nature to want to work together, which brings me to the concept of team. So it's not about me, it's about this team. And the team is amazing. It's more than just students, it's staff, it's multi-generational. I inherited the concepts of how to do field-based research from John Cherry, who's in the audience, as my mentor, and his colleagues at the University of Waterloo. I think we were taught how to think about doing this field-based work in a team setting, and I think the stories that followed this afternoon, I think, resonate on that team front. So we're all in it together, whether it's on the social side or community side or the science and innovation side. I think that's how we have to think about these systems. So what we're building is for the future. And we got a lot of work to do, and I think there's a lot of opportunity to keep working as a team. So thank you for everyone's contributions today. I thought those stories were brilliant. And I look forward to maybe having a few more minutes in the back of the room here with folks who are willing to stay.
On that note, please stay. The bar's open. The food is still here. Help yourself to a pen, a water bottle, multiples of both. Help yourself. Thanks again for coming, and enjoy the rest of the afternoon.